Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Profit Minds podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Stephen 𝐾𝐨𝐿, creator of the Profit Minds Growth System, a unique blend of profit growth, productivity acceleration, and building robust business process for scale. In every episode, I interview entrepreneurs and small business owners from around the world with a unique story to tell. You can find the show on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple and Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and more. Well, hello, everyone. Today, my guest is Daniel Nikic, the founder of COHRES, a boutique investment research firm. And today, we're going to talk about AI and data, where opportunity meets risk. Welcome, Daniel.
Well, thanks for having me, Steve.
Yeah, so same question I ask every guest when they start. Tell us your story. How did you get here?
Well, interesting. I'm originally from Canada, born and raised, but my parents were from present-day Bosnia and Herzegovina. And I always was interested kind of in the internet, what's going on in the globe, probably because my parents and also being around the international community and growing up in a multicultural society in Canada. And my background has always been in research and analysis. And I've worked in management consulting, real estate development, VC, and of course my own company, in which all the main skill sets I needed had to revolve around market research, financial analysis, and data. And after I finished university in Canada, I moved to Europe. I was young, 21, and I think it's also when you're willing to take the most risks. And in some ways, I would say the most selfish at that time period because you focus on yourself if you're lucky. And I entered into a totally new environment, moving to Croatia, different culture, different work environment, and it was a huge culture shock. But I learned the key skill of adaptability. You have to adapt to your environments. And we hear it constantly from successful business people being able to pivot and seeing what's going to happen in the future. And what led me to the point where I am today is that I was always interested in entrepreneurship. It was also my favorite course in university. I didn't have many courses I liked in university, so that was one of them. And I think being an entrepreneur and especially with investment research, you're always seeing what's going on in the world, and every day's a new day. It's not a bought day. In other words, it's not the same thing every day.
Yeah. No, that I love that. That every day is new, every day is an opportunity, every day is exciting. That's what entrepreneurship is like, right?
Oh, definitely. Yes. And I think the one thing that I liked about investment research is I used what I learned from corporate world and in the entrepreneurship. I worked with venture capital funds and also startups and got to see how everything is connected in a way. It's kind of like the food chain, but in terms of the
Mm,
business.
yeah. So talk to me about this course in entrepreneurship at a university, because most, I'll say it, um, most of the people that I know that have come out of university, they don't have a whole lot of business skills. So was the entrepreneurship course one of them that helped you understand how to run a business?
It was probably the most impactful course I had in all of university. And I started off in accounting, then I switched to international business. And we had this project where you would have a partner and you had to pick, you would get a country and you had to start a business there. And
Oh,
you had to
wow.
present it, and an investor would come and you have to pitch it, the business plan, everything. Why, what's your research and everything. And I think despite it being the most time to do this project. It took like, I think the whole semester, so 4 months. It was the most impactful because it made me think that you have to really use all what you learned into one course. You have to use a little bit of finance, a little bit of accounting, a little bit of marketing, everything. And there was an investor. And he told us a story in a class. He invested, and I went to school in Brock University. I should have said that earlier. So that's in St. Catharines near Niagara Falls for
Okay.
people who don't know. So the waterfall, Canada, a little
Yes.
bit from
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And
Most people have heard of Niagara Falls. So yeah.
and they he told us a story that he invested in ice wines in Abkhazia. And this is 2008, 2009. And during that time, there was a war there. I don't know if many remember, it was with Russia and Georgia. And we're
Okay.
all interested in, we're like, why would you go there? And he said, there's always opportunities in markets where you least expect it to be. And it's kind of relates to how you hear about the stock market. People always say buy low, sell high, right? And what I learned about this course is in order to be successful in business, you have to understand what the top management is thinking. Even if you're working in a low position in a company, you have to think about what is important for the company to succeed and grow. You can't just think about, oh, I have to think about myself. Even when negotiating, if you're going to negotiate for a higher salary or something, you have to prove your worth and are you replaceable in a way. So it was a very impactful course. I think I would recommend it to every business student. In every business school, you should have an entrepreneurship course. And to me, it's more impactful than any exam or any book. You give them
Yeah. Mhm.
industry, or it could be like a geographic region, or it could be a city. Pick the city, do a business plan where you're going and develop a company and pitch it to investors. And the investor would just drill us. I had Nigeria. Some of my classmates, they had like South Africa, France, America. Some got lucky to do Canada domestic. So they got it easier than us, but it was very interesting. And it really made you think, and they pushed on us, think globally. That was the first thing. You have to think globally. And we would be like, okay. And they said to us, you do not realize how much what's going on in the world impacts you in Canada, say what's going on in Afghanistan, as we saw, or Iraq, or etc. It impacts the whole world.
Yeah. So I'm curious, um, how would that project have been different? Were you doing it today with the ability to use AI for deep research? What would
I
that
would,
look like?
I would have saved a lot of sleepless nights, that's for sure. Uh, I think we would have had a better competitive research on the competitors. I think we could have, me and my partner, my classmate in that course, and we could have probably done a more deeper research on the whole development of the business, who could be our potential partners, how we could do the marketing and everything, have a more detailed marketing plan. Because how I view AI today and during research, it's like you're getting a research manager.
Hmm.
And it can develop several tasks and it can scrape the internet a lot quicker. Because this is 2008, 2009. Yeah, you have the internet, it's quite developed. You can't really use Wikipedia. So this is before ChatGPT or Reddit wasn't even that popular. So you can't like you hear someone talking, you can get the source. And at the time, you somewhat still use like those encyclopedias to learn about certain things, what's going on in market. And if you want to reference, and you use like Porter's Five Forces, stuff like that. I remember in
Hmm.
university, the four P's of marketing, pricing, product, and etc. So I think it would be more based on six reason why to do. I would probably reword is I would back up certain approaches to do certain things based on success stories of companies. I think that's what AI can help you do a lot to give you more to reduce the risk in making decisions. Because I think that would give confidence, of course, to the professor that I had at that time, but also to the investors that we had to present to why we're doing this and this.
Yeah. Okay. So what are the kinds of things that you're doing today with AI as an entrepreneur, as a um, an investment researcher? What are some of the things that you're doing there?
Great question. So, interesting enough, I see from a lot of people in companies and individuals in my field, they see AI has pretty much taken over a lot of their work. Hence, ChatGPT, if you want to find some research, usually people use ChatGPT or Cloud or Perplexity, etc. Though, what I do have somewhat of experience in, which was a real gift, is that I'm used to auditing data and training AI models. I worked with one startup back in the day in 2015 called 𝐏𝐫𝐨𝐼𝐭, and we were developing our own research ChatGPT. It was called ChatGPT, but it was kind of a chatbot. So I understood how important it is to train an AI model and to get the results. So I'm focusing on that with clients and also helping in terms of certain, I would say, clients to enhance their operations and skills with AI by using competitive analysis and analyzing the results, but also using my own experience. And I would say, lastly, where I see I would say a lot of companies should focus on in developing their own AI. And that's where I am now because I see less and less companies, and would even say individuals want to work with other people and more prefer to work with chatbots or AI models because they probably find it's cheaper. And in other ways, they probably find it more convenient because it's more personalized to what they need and want.
Yeah. So what does that look like if you're going to build your own model? Are you talking about taking one of the open source models and configuring it, or what are you recommending?
I think for many companies, it, it's very costly to build your own AI model from scratch. So in terms of
Sure.
natural language modeling, etc., you can kind of train your own. There's like ChatGPT is great. You can use Cloud. There's a lot of agent AIs that are available.
Hmm.
And a lot of time, I would say to them, you have to organize the data. And what you feed the information is the results usually that you get. And I think it goes back to what Jeff Bezos says. Data is the new oil. Obviously, it's not taking over oil because we know how important oil is, and we could talk that a bit later
Yeah.
about the importance of data centers and AI and etc. But it is important to make sure your data is organized correct if you're going to train your own AI model. So I organize the data information, make it so legible for AI model to understand. I kind of use the phrase, let it think that you are talking to a 9-year-old. So it
Mm.
understands trying to teach it, and you have to analyze the results. And a lot of, I would say, sensitivity analysis, scenarios. So what if you ask it synonyms, all this stuff? So it's very timely. But in my opinion, I think it's the best to use the models that are available because it's a lot cheaper, and you're not going to be able to build a better one than what's available
So
unless you're one of
so
the big
yeah.
guys.
Yeah. So what you're talking about here is making sure that the AI has a lot of information about you specifically and your business and what you care about. That not actually creating a new instance, but making sure that or a new model, but making sure that the instance that you have of ChatGPT or Claude or whatever Grok um, really knows enough about you that it can give relevant responses.
Yes, because I'll kind of give a secret what's going on. I've analyzed over 8,000 AI companies. A lot of them are using other people's AIs, just using API
Sure.
and prior remodeling. And the one thing that I, I do and with my team is we try to make it think like a person in that company would think. Because you don't need it to think like a bot copy paste. You want it to think like an individual.
Right.
And that we're still in the augmented AI stage where the AI thinks like needs to be told what to say and it still has a human interaction that's needed to give the results. And I think a lot of times with open source, there is the issue in terms of security because if you feed it, you don't want to make sure in when you're using to develop your own one, is it closed that your information will not be used for others developing their own AI model? So you also have to check that in which a lot of these open source allow, that they allow you to have your own closed
Right.
AI
So
model.
let's dig in on that a little bit. The idea of data privacy and data security, because a lot of the small business owners that I talk to don't understand that, for example, if you're using a free version of ChatGPT, that your conversations are being used to train the model. You might as well, I mean, it's just like being on Facebook, right? Everything is essentially uploaded to the internet. Um, but what about what are the kinds of things that you recommend that your clients do to protect their data and their privacy?
I would always say anything that's under NDA legal agreement that you can't share, do not use. Like even when I'm dealing with potential clients, they know I say I sign NDA agreement. I can't share you the information or samples of work that I did of that specific project. And that's how you have to approach it. Because I don't know if you read a few days ago, the Reddit co-founder, I think it's Alexis Ohanian, he mentioned how ChatGPT OpenAI use Reddit to data to train the AI model.
Sure.
And we have to take into consideration everything's on the internet that's online is there forever. Facebook, whatever, social media, etc. And I always say to be safe, just imagine you got hacked. Would you be able to sleep the next day in terms of that information? And I know it's very dark and negative to think that way, but I always say if you're going to train a model, have sample information, how you would approach something, and how would you get a certain result, because you don't want to use actual client data for it yet, due to the fact you don't know if you're getting the right results. And then again, it's under legal agreement. You can get sued and clap. And we see how many companies were suing OpenAI when ChatGPT got released because of the sourcing and etc.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that we talk to our clients about is making sure that they have an AI policy that clearly defines what models are you allowed to use, what models are you not allowed to use, um, what data can you use, like you said, um, can you use client data or not? I mean, that's a choice. Can what are the kinds of tasks that you can do? Um, and then the other big piece of it is how do you mitigate the risk of hallucinations, right? So making sure that you've thought through this and then communicate it to the entire organization, because obviously the policy is not worth the paper it's written on if nobody knows it exists. So
I agree, definitely. And I will say this, sorry, when you mentioned policies, I think a lot of times users do not read the terms and agreements that they agree to. And you got to read that stuff,
that's right.
you like it or not. So that's number one, I would say, when you mentioned, that's a great point that you mentioned about policies. And we see Europe's trying to push AI policy, all these countries. So, and it's difficult too, because if you want to get an AI model to be useful, you have to train it,
That's right.
or you're just going to be using someone else's at the end of the day.
Right. So you have to give it some amount of data. The question is, how much, how much privacy or containment is there in the platform that you're using? Some platforms have more, some platforms have less. Um, I personally would not use DeepSeek, even if it says it's a private instance, because I don't know if there isn't some kind of Trojan horse that takes the data back to China. Um, I, you know, I don't know. I mean, I know, and if there was, I have no legal recourse, right? Whereas if at least with the American companies, I know that if that winds up being the case, I at least have a legal path that I can go down. Uh, but
It's interesting you mentioned that because I had a call with a client from Saudi Arabia a few days ago, and they were saying how they use DeepSeek and ChatGPT, and they could compare the answers to see. And it's interesting. We in America obviously know about the DeepSeek and stuff, and obviously China, they don't use OpenAI as much. And I think the rest of the world, they kind of pretty much bet and test which one is better for them. And I do agree with what you said. You have to go sometimes with your gut feeling and see what are, you kind of have to double check the security policies
that's
of
right.
all these. Yeah, I'm paraphrasing what you mentioned before because data is very important and it's used from marketing, from everything, from hackers and etc. And it could be very dangerous if lost.
That's right. So again, encourage you, if you're a small business owner, to make sure you develop your own internal AI policy. Make sure that when your employees are using it, because they all are, that you know what's happening to the data that they're using, that they're following your guidelines, and that you know the platform that you're using. If you've as Daniel correctly said, right, that hey, this is, you know, you need to understand. You need to understand what the policy is, what the end user licensing agreement from each of those providers that you're using. Um, yeah, there's an awful lot of stuff you can do with AI, but you got to be careful.
No, I agree for sure.
Yeah. So let's talk about a little bit about what's going on in the world about, some of the cross-border stuff. You have a lot of international experience. Love to touch on that just a little bit before we close here. Um, what are you seeing in what's going on internationally right now?
Okay, so I've been to the Middle East for several months in the past 2 years. And the reason is I see what's going on in Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Qatar being very interesting. And for those who follow the news, we all know that when President Donald Trump of the United States, he went to the Middle East, he made agreements for investments and etc. And we hearing a lot of from private equity funds and businesses investing into these countries and also getting investments from these countries. I think America is still a huge financial capital innovation center. There's no denying it. We see what's going on with Tesla, Meta, Amazon, etc. But all these corporations are also investing in the Middle East. Europe, I think, is kind of going through a phase that is trying to find its own identity within this ever-changing market, and it's probably more R&D important in terms of what's going on in innovations, but the policies that's going on, say for the tariffs in America, it's affecting everyone. We and the world realizes it because America is such a huge economic power. And we see what's going on with China has a huge impact. And we saw that when it was the COVID crisis, hence shipping, because it first started out of China in terms of the lockdowns. And we saw how it impacted, I would say, the distribution and shipping industry. And we saw how it impacted commerce and etc. And where I see a market that's emerging immensely is, as I mentioned earlier, the Middle East. We saw with, there was a huge conference with many of, I would say, pretty prominent business people in the States attending it, from Jamie Dimon, Fink, Schwartzman, all from these big PE funds, talking about, I would say, the potential what's going on in the world and why they think the Middle East is interesting. And I see every company that's global has an international presence. You can't just be domestic unless very rarely you could just be domestic, or you have a partner that distributes your products or your services in another country if you want to be growing in today's world, because everything's impacted.
Yeah. Great. So if somebody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to reach out?
I think that you can reach me on LinkedIn. I have a pretty unique name, Daniel Nikic, or you could check out my website at www.danielnikic.com.
Okay. And that concludes our show. Thanks so much to my guest, Daniel Nikic, the founder of COHRES, a boutique investment research firm. I hope you learned something about AI and data, where opportunity meets risk. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to the Profit Minds podcast. This is your host, Dr. Stephen Kirch. Please visit www.profitminds.net for other episodes or to contact me. Thank you for your positive feedback, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others. Thanks for listening. Have a grateful day.